Good morning. We are here again, and I wanted to talk about the one thing that every believer must seek after, the one thing that I think is the most important of all things. If you could call it even a thing, it's God. And dwelling in a thing would be his temple, obviously. But I want to just talk about one of my favorite verses in the Old Testament, especially in the Psalms. You've heard me quote Zephaniah 3:17 often, but one thing that I haven't done is share Psalm 27, verse 4 and verse 8. Particularly verse 4 is my favorite, but it goes like this. It says, "One thing I've asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, and inquire in his temple." And verse 8, "You have said, seek my face. My heart says to you, your face, Lord, do I seek." Isaiah 55:6 talks about this idea of seeking again. And it says, "Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near." And Luke 11:19, Jesus speaking, says this, "And I tell you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you." So what exactly is David asking for in Psalm 27:4? What are we to be asking for when we seek the Lord and when we're looking for him? What is it that he's asking? What is the thing that he wants to know? I think when we think about this and we think about the attributes that we've talked about recently, like we've talked about, he's never changing, he's glorious, he's loving, he's gracious. And I think that's what he's asking to see. I think he's asking to see the never-changing, all-glorious, always gracious, and loving God. He's asking to see the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the ending, the ever-present one, the omnipotent God. He's asking the one who no man could look upon and live. He's asking to see God in the flesh. He wants to see his beauty. He wants to be overwhelmed, if you will, by the magnificence of God. What is he asking? I think there's a few things. There's just particularly three things that he's asking in Psalm 27:4. He's asking to dwell in the house of the Lord his entire life. Now notice, I think a lot of people read that verse, that first part of that verse, and they sit there, it says, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and they think of eternity. What about now? What about being in a place of worship and prayer and fellowship continually now? I think that's really important for us to grasp that. That is what David was seeking, was the fact that he wanted to be with the Lord always and consistently in his temple, always. And it goes on, it says, to gaze upon the beauty of God. And can you imagine that? Have you ever read Revelation chapter 1 where it talks about the beauty of the Lord? And have you read Revelation where it just continually talks about how awesome God is and how magnificent his presence is to everybody that is near him? I think it's something that we have to realize, that God is absolutely beautiful. And when we see him, we will be amazed in the beauty of our God. And number 3, he wanted to not only ask questions. Inquire has that idea of asking questions, but it also has the idea of meditating and just really thinking about the things of God. And think about this. You're in heaven, or you're in the temple of God, or the church of God, or God's church, with fellowshipping with his people. And you're asking questions, and people that have wisdom in the things of God are sharing with you God's word, not their opinions, because their opinions don't matter. Their opinions don't matter at all. It's what God's word says that matters. My opinions don't matter. It's only what God says that matters. And we need to realize that only God's word matters when it comes to things of faith. Why was he asking? The third thing that I put down and thought about when I was doing this is, why is he asking? I think there was nothing more important to David than to know God. I think that if you look at all the Psalms that David wrote, you look at his life, you look at what he did, how he acted, for the most part, he always was seeking the Lord. He had periods of time of doubt. He had periods of time of sin. He had periods of time where he was just completely blowing it. But at the same time, he never gave up on seeking the Lord. What is there? I'd ask you, and I'd ask myself: is there anything that keeps you from seeking the Lord and actually following after Him? Is there anything too painful? To somebody maybe passed away, maybe somebody hurt you, maybe you have injuries that are just insurmountable sometimes to your body, and you all of a sudden, I'm not going to follow the Lord anymore. David wasn't like that. He always sought the Lord. And I think when you read that verse in Psalm 27, verse 4, that it says, one thing I've asked of the Lord that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life and gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and inquire in His temple. It's important that we realize the one that we're seeking, the one who says in Nehemiah, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And being in His presence brings joy. In His presence, there's joy constantly and continually. I want to look at the verse a little bit more. I want to break it down a little bit, and I want to just talk about each phrase. I want to break down just a little bit. I want to start with this, one thing I've asked the Lord that I will seek after. So the idea of seeking is not just seeking to find, but seeking with a desire and a desire to secure that thing that you're going after. So if he's seeking the Lord, in this case, he wants a relationship with the Lord. The question is do we have a relationship with the Lord like that? Or do we want a relationship with the Lord like that? It's not that hard. I mean, Isaiah 55:6 says, seek the Lord while He may be found, call upon Him while He is near. Jesus told us He'd never leave us or forsake us. And after all, Jesus is God. So we have that promise that God is always with us. And then the second part, another part of that verse goes, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. As I mentioned before, he wasn't talking about some future thing, an event in his life. He was talking about the here and now. He wanted to be with God. He wanted to have communion. He wanted to offer prayers. He wanted to hear God's voice. He wanted to be with God's people. And then it says to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord. The idea of gazing is the idea of perceiving with intelligence and wisdom. To perceive with intelligence and wisdom, not just happenstance knowledge, or just, I just looked at the Lord and I just looked at Him real quickly and that was it. That was good enough for me. No, it was never good enough for David. It should never be good enough for us. That we should always seek the Lord and always seek to know Him better and better. The last part of this is to inquire in His temple. That means to meditate. And to inquire in His temple means to meditate on the things of the Lord. So what will we meditate on? On His word we meditate day and night, right? That's the righteous man meditates on his word day and night. And how does that look? I think that looks like you get up in the morning, you read the word, you end your night reading the word and in prayer. You seek the Lord while He may be found, and you are always looking for Him in every situation that happens, because He is everywhere present. I just want us to understand that the most important thing, the one thing that we want to go after is the Lord. There is nothing more important than that. Nothing more important than Him. Remember this, He's going to say one day to you and to me, believers, well done, good and faithful servant. Welcome into the joy of your Lord. Wouldn't it be nice to know a little bit of Him now?